Yesterday, I made a video talking about all the things going on with the strike, and I left some things out, some of them on purpose, some of them on accident, and I got a lot of pushback in the comments, and I felt they deserved to be addressed. So I brought on my good friend Herbert, who's going to help push back on some of those issues and get the clarification needed. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla Weekend. Herbert, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Brian. This is my favorite thing to do. Push back on you. I'm just kidding you. I love it. So people, last time we did this, they go, why is Herbert being so mean? I'm not. I'm just reading some of the comments that were sometimes not as good in terms of like supportive. You got so many supportive comments. Whenever you do a video, you knock it out of the park. But there's some things that are misunderstood. And so let's go through each one of them.
Let's do it.
Okay. So one of the first ones here is from Sam Gibson. And he said, not once did you mention the insane amount these executives are making. Maybe that would be the reason they go bankrupt. These companies have always been too top heavy. I mean, that is an absolutely true statement, correct?
It is 100%
Mary Barra.
true. Yeah, made $30 million. So that is absolutely true. The first problem is the union is unable to negotiate CEO compensation. That's outside of their purview. They only represent the workers. They also don't represent the white collar people, the people back at corporate. They do not negotiate on their behalf. But if you were to cut Mary's compensation to zero and give all of that money back to the workers towards their wages, it would be a penny an hour or less. It would be less than a penny an hour. That's not the real problem. Her pay is, in my opinion, a bit absurd for what the company is doing. But I guess that's the price of having a leader, a real leader, and it matters. That. And if you were to look at like Jim Farley's pay, it comes out to something like $1 a car. And even if you count the stock compensation, $4 a car. If you were to take that $4 and divide it among all the workers that built that car and say, this is your raise, they would tell you to take a hike. That's not the raise we want. And it also ignores that most of their pay, most of those $8 to $30 million are in the form of stock compensation, which is non-cash. It's not money that's coming out of the pool. I think the workers should be compensated with stock, not profit sharing, not necessarily higher wages, though those are definitely overdue for an increase, but stock. Give the employees ownership in the products that they're making. And the union contracts historically have completely skipped that. That's not something they're interested. They don't want, it seems, they don't want the employees owning the company. And I can't understand why. But yeah. And Sean Fain is trying to make this about class warfare. He says these CEOs are building rockets. Are they? Because I only know one CEO who does that, and it's completely separate from his auto business. And I don't believe Mary has a rocket program. I'm not aware of one.
Or maybe she does. But yeah, no. So this is the big difference between Tesla. Is they compensate their employees well, and they give them stock options, and they're not at this point, demanding a union. And so this is a big challenge that these big three have to deal with. And here showed up. They're striking, and they have to figure out what to do. And it's going to hit them hard on the both delayed, their vehicle plans, but also in their profitability. It's going to come up. So the next question that's been asked by this guy named MB, he says, he thinks that the long-term plan is for the big three to take these no-interest EV loans and use them to build brand new factories in the red and non-union states. And after that's done, they'll close the factories in the union states, which will be the end of unions. It's a big assumption there, but
it's a big assumption.
Be a long time.
But is it wrong? It appears that is exactly what they're already doing. And I don't think it's because of the unions. I think the unions have long been a thorn in their side, but not one that isn't without benefits. The union has been, the workers are the ones who built the cars. Without them, there were no cars. So they're aware of that. But when the union does things that overplays their hand, that hurts the company, it doesn't create a lot of strong motivation to keep those factories open. The question's going to, so if the union were to get all their demands met, it would accelerate the transition to different factories. Their demands are a little steep, and there's people saying that I'm just supporting the corporations. I'm not. I'm supporting the workers. I don't believe that. Anyone who's seen my channel knows I'm not a big fan of the big three. Certainly not their leadership. But if you look at how they're building all these compensation plans, it's clear that the union leadership is not going to let anything go to a vote unless they like it first, no matter how much the workers might like it.
Yeah, it's always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This next question is quite interesting. I like it a lot, especially the last sentence. It's from AK North. And it says that 32 hours is a bargaining chip that they can give up in negotiations. So that was interesting because it is odd that they were fighting for more pay raise, but also reduction in hours. It sounds right that he might have been correct that this is a bargaining chip, but he said that the pay raise is just one part of the story. The bigger piece is removing the two-tier system. This was put in place after 2008. It's a common tactic to try to break worker solidarity. UPS, in the most recent strike threat, got theirs removed. And so I'm fairly certain that this strike won't end until this two-tier system is removed.
That is an absolutely great comment. The two-tier system was always a bad deal. What it said was, this was a contract negotiation years ago where they said, look, we're going to give you guys a raise, but anyone hired after today doesn't get it. They have to phase into it over 8 years. And that meant that people standing side by side on the line doing the exact same job were getting vastly different pay. And that was a bad idea by the unions. That created a lot of hostility and resentment in the workplace. And the union did it to notch an easy victory, but it was a Pyrrhic victory because here we are 10, 15 years later, and so many of their members are now still stuck in the second tier. Getting rid of that, I think, is something that has to happen. So they want the end of the two-tier system. They want a cost of living adjustment. I think that's completely reasonable. Inflation is not always 2%. It'd be great if it was, or at least more predictably so. But we've seen years like over the past few years where inflation outpaced everything. And it makes it incredibly difficult for your lifestyle as an employee to even maintain, let alone get ahead. But the other one is the 32-hour work week. Bringing that up is crazy. They're not saying, and I've seen comments from people, well, people deserve a better work-life balance. That's not what they're asking for. They're not asking to hire 20% more employees. They're asking for overtime to kick in a full day sooner. So just by getting 40 hours of pay for 32 hours of work is a 30% raise. And if you add on to that overtime kicks in on Friday morning, essentially it means you're getting double time and a half to work Friday. Straight time for the first 32 and double time and a half, that ends up being a 30% raise. And then if they want 40 to 46% on top of that, the net raise ends up being, at 40%, it'd be a 54% raise, and at 46%, it'd be a 61% raise. Asking for a 61% raise is an awful lot. And then the last thing they want, and this isn't, I think, so much the union's members asking as the union officials, is they want certainty that the new EV factories will all be union. And that's going to be a real sticking point because they're just asking to expand their power base at a time when Ford and GM and Stellantis are less interested in that.
I really hope that that commenter was correct, that this is a bargaining chip and that's all this was. Because if it isn't, we're going to see a strike for many months for them to really ask for this. It's just crazy. And if they win, if they get what they want, there's just no way already at this point for these big three. You've been covering these big three quite heavily. You already said that they're doomed. This is just going to accelerate how fast they're doomed. So this next comment here, I I can't. I don't understand if this is sarcastic or not, but I don't think he's being sarcastic. This RP16, he says, "Man, I love the UAW. These guys are actually sticking to their demands. 32-hour weeks need to be the standard across the nation."
So I don't think it's sarcastic. I think it's someone who doesn't work in the Rust Belt, doesn't know that the demand isn't actually for less hours but more pay. But that's, a tough issue. I think everyone should work 32 hours at most because Fridays are tough. By the end of the week, you are burnt out. I've had jobs where I've worked double shifts, and it is taxing. You do not do good work on hour 16. And conversely, I've had jobs where I worked 4 10s, and even though it was still 40 hours, it felt great because I got a 3 day weekend. At least I got something. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difference between 4-day work week or 32 work week, 32-hour work week.
right.
That's the difference. Because I mean, lots
And
of
they're
people
not
work at
sticking to their guns on it. As the previous commenter said, it does sound like a bargaining chip.
yeah,
And even if they
that's
get
good.
it,
Yeah.
they're not going to work 32 hours. They're still going to work 40 plus.
Brown Waffles says that the strike might get bigger this Friday at noon. Why is that?
This is a comment I've seen many, many times in here. And it sounds like there is a whisper on the ground that the F 150 plant may also join the strike tomorrow. And the F 150 plant would be absolutely hitting them where it hurts. It would be escalating the war strategically to a much higher level. Because the F 150 plant is the bread and butter. And I got quite a few comments saying, be on the lookout for Friday. And some going more specific and saying, my friend who used to work at Ford and is now a parts supplier has said F 150 parts may be stopping on Friday. So if
Wow.
that's the case, they're
Yeah.
taking it up, they're kicking it up a level, and that's, one tactic. And one that would certainly force Ford back to the bargaining table. But we don't know if we know that Ford and Stellantis, and I believe GM have all submitted offers and did so before the strike began. But the answer was nope. All of these are just a no-go. We're not even going to give you a counteroffer. I'd read that there is a counteroffer to GM at this time, but I haven't seen what it is. And just this morning, we saw that Ford has reached an agreement in Canada with their
No, no, no. Yep.
labor board that would prevent a strike there. So, on the one hand, the fact that Canada would definitely not be joining the strike weakens the UAW's hand. But if they strike at the F-150 plant, it would escalate things for sure.
It wouldn't surprise me if this Brown Waffles and a lot of your other viewers are actually people that works at the union.
It certainly
maybe
reads like it.
maybe it's giving you some hints of what might happen, or threatening the management. This next commenter from NRHEG Paintman says the union is willing to go as long as they can. The CEOs believe their workers are overpaid. Most people agree that the workers are underpaid. So there's a middle ground that can be had, but I think it will be a very difficult task to make these two extremely different sides see each other's issues. So he's saying the union is willing to go as long as they can. I mean, so far as far as I know, every time I've seen a union strike, it goes on for many more months and many longer period than most people expect, because both sides are going to stick to their guns and try to see who blinks first. It's not going to be resolved in a week. What's your expectation?
You always hear about the long strikes, and the short strikes you're less likely to hear about.
Oh, true point. Yeah.
The claim that the car companies think their workers are overpaid, I disagree with that. I think they understand that they're underpaid. The question is by how much, and that's why Ford has already submitted. Ford and GM have submitted, and maybe Stellantis also, but have submitted proposals, offers saying 20 to 26% increases, to which Sean Fain from the UAW said it's a no-go. So, well, okay, what do you want? You already know our demands. If you're saying it's my way or the highway, that's not a negotiation. That's more like a hostage situation. And unfortunately, it's the kind of hostage situation where you're asking for something that I don't believe can be done. So the workers absolutely need to be paid more. There is no question about that. The question is how much more, and and then of course all the little terms around the edges. The things like also on the list of their demands was that they go back to a defined benefit pension plan rather than a defined contribution plan, which means instead of the company saying we're going to put aside this much money for you each year towards your pension, it used to be that they'd say work this many years and you just get a paycheck. And that is gone. Nobody does that anymore. It is extremely rare. I'd say well under 1% of current workers have access to a plan like that because it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Wow, you know a lot, man. That's great. I've been learning quite a bit here. This last comment here says that workers make less money now than 20 years ago. Okay, I think that's true. Meanwhile, the price of the vehicles has nearly doubled since 2007. Record setting profits went somewhere, but not to the workers. And I know you and I just covered this news, or we looked at GM, for example, where their revenue stayed flat, grew a little bit over 10 years, but their profit did grow 50% growth. So there might be some truth to what this person's saying. Even though they agreed to take concessions in 2008 after their CEOs ran the company to bankruptcy and were promised to be rewarded when the company got back on its feet, instead, they want more concessions. The money they pay workers counts for 46% of their total cost to make the vehicle. GM alone could give all 50,000 UAW members an extra $80,000 a year and still would have made $18 billion in profit last year.
So the 18 billion is inaccurate. It's more like 11. I ran the numbers. I didn't come up with 18, but that's not the point. If you're looking at billions in profit on hundreds of billions in revenue, that's a Wall Street dog, and the company would be in danger. But the real problem with that is all of that profit is coming from the internal combustion cars, which are on their way out. Those will be gone in 10 to 12 years. And neither Ford nor GM, and we haven't seen the numbers from Stellantis, neither Ford nor GM are profitable on their EVs. They hope to be profitable by 2025, but it is unclear if they will be. And so what you're asking for is a cut of the profit on a product that will no longer exist. Would you also like a cut of the risk on the EVs? Would you like it if your paycheck was negatively impacted by the losses in the EV division? Of course not. And no one would ask you to do that. That's crazy. In terms of, they did, the 2008 deal was not good. The 2008 or 9 deal was not good. It cut their wages in order to save the companies. And it worked. It did save the companies. But what it didn't have was adequate profit sharing mechanisms. What I would have wanted, and what I would want in any company I work for that I believe in, is stock compensation. If I were to get a job, if I was in my 20s, I would go work at Tesla because they've got the best employee stock purchase program. You can buy, at the end of each quarter, you can buy shares from the previous quarter based on the lowest trading day, and then Tesla kicks in another 15%. 15%. So that means if you bought on March 1st, you would have paid about $110 a share, 115, and Tesla would have kicked in another 15. So if you put in 1,000, you would have got 11 shares, and you would have, and today those 11 shares would be worth almost $3,000, and that's an extra $2,000 in my pocket that I wouldn't have otherwise had. But if I worked at GM, I don't think I would take the stock. I don't think I would buy the stock, because even the employees don't seem very motivated to buy a whole lot of the company stock, because they have such an adversarial relationship with the CEOs, with the management, and maybe they should. Maybe those are people that should not be trusted. I can't speak as much to that as maybe they can, but it was asking for a cut of the profit, but not the stock, is tough. And there are profit sharing schemes, but they're not very aggressive.
What do you think about the timing? I mean, so this strike is happening now, right when we're just seeing the EV adoption exploding, and GM and Ford, Stellantis all know that they're struggling at this point to make a profitable EV. Now you got the unions. Do they think that this is it? If I don't make a decision now, it's just going to look worse, or?
Well, the contract expired, so now is is a
I
time
see.
that was accidentally scheduled in the past. So it's mostly coincidence. They can, yeah, they didn't have to do all three at once. I think it was smart that they did. I think it exerts the kind of pressure that needs to be. The only smarter way, but would have been risky, would have been to go after the weakest of the three first and get the best deal and then tell the other two to
Yeah,
match
I
it.
think the reason they did that though is that they want to get the government to come in, right? So the government already announced a $15 billion, 2 billion of which is grants, and the rest is loans, and they specifically used the word union, union workers compensation. So, this is to get more money from the union, and that $2 billion is enough to cover the pay raises that they're talking about. So I think they're asking the government, look, the entire auto industry in the U.S. is going to go down. You better step up, and that's what we saw, right? We saw Biden and his team come to try to help negotiate because it's a big deal. So
Well, they said they were going to come, and then they made it a Zoom meeting. And frankly, this whole thing
yeah,
could have been an email. But the
yeah,
I think that's right. I think you raise a good point that doing it all at once does kind of force the government to intervene a bit. There are a number of Tesla fans who say, "Good, let the big three go under completely," and
mm-hmm.
I disagree with that strongly. These
Mm-hmm.
are competition is good. They're these people are necessary to our future, to our EV transitional strategy. These are good people who are just doing a good job as best they can under difficult circumstances. And if you kill the entire big three, you might as well just kill the entire Midwest because so many people are directly or indirectly employed in the industry that it would be catastrophic. And I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah,
There are
you could
there,
keep throwing money at them, Brian, and then if they're just not profitable, they're just not able to make that transition because it is such a different car, the
but they
EVs.
are well,
You're just throwing money at them, and it's just going to die anyways. And so it's not that you killed them; it's like they killed themselves, and you're just like delaying that.
and I would still disagree because they've got time and they're taking the money from the internal combustion side and pumping it into the electric side, and they're
Okay.
doing so aggressively. They can see the writings on the wall. At the Detroit Auto Show, nearly every car that was available for a test ride was electric, so even they know that this is happening, and they don't want to die. And they can. Sandy Monroe had suggested that on the F 150 Lightning, that on a per unit basis, they may already be turning a profit. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And this is before the Gen 2 comes out, which will be out, I think, next year or the year after. That will have a lot of radical improvements in everything. So the fact that they're not profitable today on EVs doesn't concern me. I'm confident they can be. They are profitable overall. That money is being redirected. We just need to, and I don't support the government stepping in and giving them money to make this problem go away. If they wanted to do that, I don't know, maybe set up a separate pension system for I don't know something, but just giving money to GM and Ford and Stellantis is a bad idea, I think. So, Herbert, thank you for
Thank you. That was
being
fun.
so kind as to abuse me with these questions that I emailed you and asked you to read to me.
Thank you.
But thank you also for the conversation around it and for actually pushing back on some of my assertions. That's how when I'm on your channel, I get brighter with Herbert.
I always get brighter with you, buddy. You're the one.
And for that matter, for those of you just checking us out for the first time, Herbert has a fantastic channel called Brighter with Herbert, link in the description, and he does great work. So for everybody else, thanks for coming in. Tell us in the comments, what did we still miss? What did we still misunderstand? That's how I know to get a little bit smarter, do a little bit more research and all that. And for everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual things, and stay tuned, stay juicy. And I can't wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.